Simplest Nasus mid guide on YouTube, let's get started. First thing is runes. You have 3 rune setups that you can take. First of all is Lethal Tempo. Lethal Tempo gives you attack speed and range. You might not see it at first, but it's really good for Nasus. You can get over 300 range with your ult. Second rune is Triumph. Triumph is really good for those close battles where you're going to struggle to survive. Legend Tenacity is a must take. You cannot swap this rune with any other one. You're going to need this Tenacity for team fights. The less time stunned on the Morgana Q, the better. Last 10 gives you more damage when you're low HP. Really good for those close battles. Second page is always going to be Resolve. Second wind for good sustain in lane, so you can survive easier until level 6. I personally take Unflinching right now. You can also take Overgrowth if you struggle with your amount of health later on. Rune Shards, simple, ability haste, health scaling, and health. You can swap health around with tenacity and slow resist. Your second rune setup is the same as this one, except for lethal tempo, you will take fleet footwork. Fleet footwork is good if you're struggling against a specific matchup. It's also good to stack and run away back to safety. I'll show an example on screen showing how fleet footwork can help you farm safely. Your third rune setup is only for extremely hard matchups like Ahri, Anivia, Akshan, Sylas. Keep in mind you can always check the Mobile Fire guide for a complete list of matchups. You're doing this rune setup if you're doing Emax Nasus, so you're gonna buy Doran's Ring when you're doing this rune setup. Summon Area will hit your enemy as soon as you hit them with E, and it can end up hitting twice if your enemy stays in your E for long enough. You can also take Comet, but keep in mind that Comet is not a guaranteed hit, it's a skill shot, your enemy can dodge it, even though it does more damage. If you're in lower elos, Comet might be a better idea, because your enemies are not going to dodge Comet as often. But if you start seeing that your enemies are dodging Comet a lot, just switch back to Aerie and it will always hit. Mana Flow Band is obligatory here. It will give you up to 250 mana, which is really good for early game when you're using your E. I will mention this later, but make sure you only use your E when you have Mana Flow Band up. You can look in your HUD to check if Mana Flow Band is ready to proc or not. You can choose between Transcendence or Absolute Focus. I personally prefer Absolute Focus. You get an adaptive damage bonus when you're above 70% health. That's extra 30 AP, which is really good in combination with your E. Basically, your main goal with your E is to make sure your enemy recalls as fast as possible and you can deny them XP and gold. For the last rune, for Sorcery, you have Scorch. In my experience, Scorch saved me from not killing the enemy multiple times. I left them really low with my E, but they ended up dying with Scorch, so I definitely recommend taking this. Second page is the same thing, Second Wind and Unflinching, but on the Rune Shards you will take Adaptive Force twice, and like I've said before, you can switch between Health and Tenacity Slow Resist, but I definitely recommend Health here because you don't have any source of health besides this rune shard. Itemization. If you didn't watch the runes section, I suggest you check it out because your runes are going to be based off your first item. If you're taking Aerie, you will buy the Doran's Ring. If you're taking Fleet or Lethal Tempo, you'll buy the Doran's Shield. Don't buy too many potions. Every time you recall, make sure you don't buy more than 2 potions. 2 potions is already enough. 1 is okay. You want to save a lot of gold when you're playing Nasus mid. Your first item is 90% of the time going to be Sheen, but I suggest you buy Boots first if you struggle to 1v1 your opponent or if you know you can't kill them. Matchups like Ryze, LeBlanc, Azir, these matchups have high mobility and can escape very easily, so you already know you're not going to kill them. So you take this instead of Sheen because you know you're not going to fight and win. Make sure you always recall when you have 900 gold to buy Sheen. Sheen is really OP and you need it as soon as possible. Always build Sheen and Boots after. Don't build full item first and then go Boots. Always go Sheen and Boots after. Your first item is going to be Triforce. Straightforward. Nasus doesn't have any other good items besides Triforce. Divine Sunderer was deleted in Season 2024, so this is the only good Sheen item that works. I've tried builds with Sundered Sky and Spear of Shojin. These items are good, but they don't give you as much damage on the Q as Triforce does. Because of Spellblade, Triforce will always do more damage than these other items. Your second item will depend on the team comp. If you see a balance of AD and AP, then your item is going to be Jak'Shos. If you see an attack speed-based champion like a Trundle, a Vayne, then you will do Frozen Heart. You will also build Frozen Heart if you have more AD than AP on the team. If by any chance you have the opposite in the enemy team comp, if you have a lot of mages and you only have like one AD champion, then you will do Kaenic Rokern or Spirit Visage. Right now, this is very personal preference when it comes to the lack of ability haste you have in the mid game. With Kaenic Rokern, you're going to have around 40 ability haste by 20 minutes. With Spirit Visage, you will have 55. This might not sound much, but it's a big difference between your Qs, because you will have around 3 seconds without Visage and 2.5 seconds with Visage. I personally build Kaenic because I don't mind the 3 seconds. I think I can still hold on to the Qs, but if you feel like your Qs are very slow on cooldown, then you can buy Visage first. Regardless of what second item you buy, your third item is always going to be Sterak's. Sterak's right now in Season 2024 gives you Tenacity. It's one of the few items that gives you Tenacity nowadays. It also gives you 400 health, which is insane for team fights and insane for survivability, and lifeline, of course. The rest of your build will depend on the enemy team comp, like I've said before. If you have a lot of AD in the team comp, you can do Unending Despair, you can do Rendwin's Omen, you can do Denmin's Blade. Never build Rendwin's Omen and Frozen Heart in the same game, as they both have the rock solid passive, and that is just a waste of a passive. So instead build like Deadman's Blade or Unending Despair. Keep in mind that if you need anti-heal, do not build Formnail at its fullest. Only build Bramble Vest. Don't finish Formnail. Why is this? You get 40% Grievous Wounds regardless. If you need magic resistance, I've already spoke about Koenig and Spirit Visage. Force of Nature is also good if you want the movement speed. If you have a fed mage in your team, you definitely want to need Abyssal Mask as soon as possible. Abyssal Mask will reduce the magic resist of your enemies, which means your AP mage is going to do way more damage. Hollow Radiance is almost the same as Unending Despair, but for AP. If you're going full MR build, you should build Hollow Radiance if you already have Spirit Visage and Koenig and you don't want the speed that Force of Nature gives you. For spells, I definitely recommend Ghost and Flash if you're playing on mid, but if you end up playing on top lane, I definitely recommend Ghost and TP. Why TP? Because on top lane you're most likely going to be split pushing, so TP is going to be useful for those TPs between objectives and back to lane, stuff like that. But if you're playing mid, I would definitely recommend Ghost and Flash, but in mid you can also take TP if you would like. If you would see, for example, that the matchup is going to be hard and you're probably not going to win and you're going to end up split pushing anyways, then if you already know that, if you already have that knowledge in mind, for example, if you're playing against an Ahri, then I can definitely suggest you can go Ghost and TP so that you can split after. Keep in mind that you don't want to have two splitters in the team. If you already have like a Yorick, then don't try this at all. Just go Ghost and Flash and just play around your team. Yorick is going to be splitting anyways. You don't want to have two splitters in the game. Also, when you're split pushing, make sure you focus at one lane at a time. Make sure you take the tier 1 tower and then take the tier 2 tower and then you swap lane, go to top, take the tier 1 tower, tier 2 tower. Always keep an eye on the map, see if there's enemies coming for you, back off. Try to joke around, hide in the bushes so that you can keep putting pressure on. But this is generally macro, so if you already know macro, you already know what I'm talking about. When the game starts, always make sure that you protect the jungler by walking over here and checking if there is any invades coming in. If you see people coming in, just back off. Just a small thing to keep an eye on. The way you're going to farm with Nasus is very simple. You always stay safe back from your minions, and when someone's low, you just walk in, you Q, and you walk back. If you're playing Emax Nasus, make sure you always level up your E and max it. The way you're going to farm as Emax Nasus is very simple. Try to get your opponent close to a minion that is about to die, and if you see that opportunity, you E. So you get the minion, you also get a Manifold Band stack, and you hurt your enemy champion. Always check the bottom of your HUD so you can see Manifold Band is up, and you want to do this multiple times until you have the 250 mana. After you get the 250 mana, you can just play just like normal Nasus, walk up to stack when you can, and hit your enemy champion with E when you can. So there's 5 things you need to keep an eye on when you're playing Nasus mid. This is the first thing you need to keep in mind. Most against of your matchups, you're going to want to play defensive until level 6. So you're going to walk to a minion, you're going to Q when it's low health, and walk back. Keep yourself under tower most of the time, but don't let all the enemy minions crash into the tower so that you can freeze the wave if you can. If you don't know what freezing is, search on YouTube. You're going to need it to actually play Nasus in any lane. If you've played Nasus top, you already know what I mean. Most Nasus players on top play the same way. Second thing to keep in mind is you're going to get 100 stacks by 10 minutes. The sooner you get there, the better. Sometimes I have games where I have 200 stacks by 10 minutes. If you do, you're probably going to kill your opponent really easily. But if you don't, keep in mind that you want to get that 100 mark as soon as possible. Third thing you can keep in mind is you do not leave mid until you're level 6. If you leave mid early, you're pretty much useless because you don't have enough stacks, you don't have Sheen, and you don't have ult. The best thing you can do is slow your opponent in an armor pen. This is one of the few weaknesses that Nasus mid has, but after you get level 6 and you have Sheen and 100 stacks, you can start roaming. Fourth thing you need to keep in mind is do not let your jungler gank you before you hit level 6. Sometimes your jungler is powerful enough to 1v1 your enemy laner. If you feel like he has that confidence, just let him go. Make sure you slow your opponent and E, and then fall back and go back to your stacking. Until you're level 6, you can't really do much else. Fifth thing that you need to keep in mind, if you're low HP, don't stay under tower for too long. If you have level 6, you can risk staying under tower, and if you get dived, you might actually get a kill. You recall as soon as you have 900 gold to buy Sheen. As soon as you have 100 stacks, Sheen built, and you're level 6, I definitely suggest you try to kill your opponent. You most likely can. For this, I definitely suggest you check out the Mulfire guide, and in the threats section, you will see all the matchups and how to properly fight them and counter them. If you manage to succeed and get ahead, make sure you play around your opponent's mistakes. At some point, you're going to be so ahead that you might want to play around the map. like doing objectives, doing Drake, doing Herald, or maybe ganking bot or top, depending on what's happening at the moment. If your lane didn't go well for you, then keep doing the same thing you were doing before level 6. Keep playing safe and keep stacking. At some point, bot lane will most likely swap with mid. 90% of the times this is what happens. So afterwards you go to bot lane and you keep farming until you have 400 stacks by 20 minutes. Basically as soon as you get the 400 stacks and you have Triforce build, you can already fight. Play for objectives, help your team, etc. When you're playing for the mid game and playing around objectives and team fights, always make sure you have Ghosts. Flash is optimal if you have it, but you can also fight if you don't have it, and ult. You're gonna need these 3 things, or 2, if you're gonna fight. Always save your W for backliners. As soon as you steal your opponent, you ghost, you ult, your E, and you just try to kill them as fast as possible so you can move on to the next target. Basically from here on out, it's based off of macro. If you don't know what macro is, I suggest you also search on YouTube. It's a pretty standard thing to know in League of Legends for all champions. And this is it. This is my Nasus mid guide. Make sure you check the description. My Bulbafire is always updating every patch with new info. I also stream on Twitch, so if you have any specific questions, you can just go there, see if I'm live, and if I am, just chat with me and ask whatever you want to ask. Thank you for watching.